Now I'm going to briefly introduce our next speaker, is Christine Cooke, who is the Education Policy Director here at Sutherland Institute. She's been here now for
4 years.
4 years. She has a law degree from Arizona State University, and she's been working on innovation and various education policies here for that time. So I'll turn the time over to Christine.
Thank you. Just so you know,
You should have been doing this 20 minutes early.
no, this is perfect. During the luncheon, there were some people who were saying that now that you're retiring, are you willing to go back to the classroom? So people are wondering if you're serious and would love to have you back there. And we so appreciate your time, your leadership on this issue, and your energy. We can see that you'd be a great teacher as well. So I thought it'd be appropriate to start my brief remarks and this panel that we're going to have in a little bit on innovation in the teacher profession by giving you some context on education policy. And it's the context that Sutherland Institute will put ourselves in whenever we're looking at any topic under the education policy umbrella, whether it's testing, career readiness, the teacher profession, and beyond. So the context is this, and it comes from our education vision. Human beings are magnificent. We are inherently created to learn, and we have the capacity to do so. Aristotle also put it in a different way. He said, all men by nature desire to know. We also all have different, unique, God-given skills, talents, weaknesses, and callings or purposes in life that we're uniquely fitted for. Education is the means by which we fully realize those skills, overcome those weaknesses, or fulfill those purposes. So an important part of looking at policy through this, in this context, is a reminder that education is broader than schooling or any one approach to schooling or even any education policy that we could debate. And is obvious on some level, but worth saying that education and learning existed long before education systems, right? The US system or the Utah system that was codified in 1895. And at the same time, we all know that formal schooling is a crucial part of life and has long-term outcomes, including lifelong earnings, civic engagement, literacies of all sorts with which to engage the world, opportunities out of poverty, family creation, social skills, and more. And those who graduate and earn a diploma from formal schooling, called high school, are more likely to have employment in the long run, less likely to engage in criminal behavior or need social services. They tend to have better health outcomes and longer life expectancy. So the distinction between education and schooling is only worth mentioning not to create a hierarchy of goodness or value, but to give perspective when policy discussions call for it, which is almost always the case. So another way of putting this is that our pivot foot in education policy is first the learning of the student. So, which is why we've also been focusing on innovation in education. You all sat down today and saw a booklet on your chair, and like has been mentioned, it's one in a series. And I see faces of those who joined us May 15th for the launch event and that, so welcome back. People generally have a warm feeling towards the term innovation. We like entrepreneurs, innovators, and that impulse is legitimate because they are typically the leaders who are meeting a need better than we have in the past. We respect that, we want that, and we look for it. But even though the term has this benefit of a positive connotation, we're often asked, what do you mean by innovation? Why is Sutherland focused on innovation? So innovation to some degree always means change. You can debate whether or not it needs to be grand change, small change, whether we're talking about a really narrow term like disruptive innovation or other changes, whether it needs to come from lawmakers or whether it needs to come from private players, whether it really springs from cultural forces or structural. Sutherland believes it can include all of those. But we should be clear that not all changes are created equal. Some are in fact bad for students. So change for the sake of change is not our goal. But placing ourselves again in the context of first meeting the unique needs of the individual, whatever changes are necessary, whatever changes allow us to continually get better at doing just that is our goal. And having an innovative mindset or simply recognizing the reality that there are changes also has a positive side effect, which is humility. Society, circumstances, technology, constantly changing. None of us knows everything, which is why innovation and the space for it may over time be what leads us in the right direction. So this is, obviously partly a shameless plug for the publication, but we think it's worth a read. It can encourage you to challenge assumptions that you have. And for those who are looking for specific innovative ideas in Utah and across the nation, it covers topics like cutting costs in higher education, something that affects nearly all of us, student discipline, and the backdrop that is for student learning, flexible education spending accounts, which gives parents more options when they feel like their district school might not be meeting the needs. Competency-based education, which is flipping seat time and knowledge acquisition on its head. Career pathways, legitimizing pathways into different industries. And even the teacher profession is covered in the publication as well, which is obviously why we're here today. So it's no secret that the teacher profession is a hot topic in Utah and actually across the nation. And if you are reading the news, hopefully not avoiding it, but if you're reading the news, you're likely hearing about teacher shortages, protests, Red for Ed, requests for more pay, and so on. And we should care about this because the state of the teacher profession has profound impacts on student learning. Research shows overwhelmingly that outside of the influence of parents in the home, the teacher is the single most important factor in a child's academic success. A year with a teacher performing below his or her best has lasting impacts beyond that academic year, just like an excellent teacher can have lasting impacts for good. So even here in Utah, we are feeling the effects of some teacher shortages in certain areas particularly. So rural districts, special needs classrooms, and math and science teaching fields. A 2017 report out of the University of Utah's Education Policy Center found that 56%, more than half, of the state's teachers left after an 8-year period from 2008 to 2015. Title I schools had an even higher percentage of teacher turnover, and those schools are serving low-income families, which compounds a tricky problem because Title I schools have a demographic that especially needs good teachers and lasting impacts. The same report also found that young teachers were most likely to leave. Nearly 3/4 of teachers 25 years old or younger, left during that 8-year study, most leaving after only 3 years. So we do know that this generation has a higher career change rate than perhaps other generations, but still the teacher profession used to promise stability for many young college graduates. We've talked about some of these things in Utah. So in the more recent past, Utah has tried to respond to this, creating stipends or extra pay for teachers that are in high-need areas, differences or non-traditional licenses to get into the teacher profession, developing in-classroom career pathways, so this could be like a teacher leader role. And what's caught the attention more recently, obviously, is increasing starting salary, which has sparked these salary wars that we read about in the media. Policymakers and researchers have also begun to gather information through surveys to say what is really the root cause of those who are leaving the profession. So last year, a report from the same Education Policy Center published initial results from the Educator Career and Pathway Survey for Teachers. So there are several questions. I would encourage people to go look at that report. It looked at reasons for why people enter the profession and why they exit. You'll also see in your program, there are a couple of graphs there that you might want to look at that are really interesting. So it found that the vast majority of people entering the teacher profession were going into it for really noble reasons. Among the top 5 factors, if you just want to look at the top 2, 85% desired to make a worthwhile difference in the lives of children, 70% desired to contribute to the greater societal good. On the other graph, for those who chose to leave the profession, and by the way, not just moving schools, this is those who left the profession entirely. The top reason that was either extremely or very influential in their decision to leave was emotional exhaustion, stress, and burnout, which is staggering. Pay and salary made the list, but further down on that list in those particular categories. Another interesting thing to note, if you can imagine all the different reasons why somebody would want to leave, relocation, had a child, health, so on and so forth, the second highest reason that was either extremely or very influential was other. Right? So what's not covered by that? What do we still need to learn? There's clearly more to look at there. For many, there is a hope of doing something great, but perhaps the emotional exhaustion is just too much, which is a heartbreaking reality for those teachers that had this dream, and also, again, devastating for those who need experienced, fulfilled teachers which is our students. If we can get this policy right, Utah teachers and students can thrive. And that's the hope that we have and the reason why we host this panel. So luckily, we have some of the best and brightest leaders in education to help us think through some of these issues, which brings us to our panel. And I believe that we are going to do a quick change of seats here so that we can get our panel up here. So thank you.